Have you ever wondered why plants in the rainforest have larger, thinner leaves, whereas trees in the desert have smaller, thicker leaves? What is responsible for the large amount of diversity seen in organisms? Here at the University of British Columbia, Dr. Chris Muir explores this ancient question through his research with tomato leaves while working at the Biodiversity Research Center. His findings indicate that natural selection is the main factor. In his words,
and we found some evidence that looked like that the differences between species were driven by natural selection rather than non-adaptive processes such as just mutation and a process called genetic drift.
So, what is natural selection?
But natural selection, and this is what Darwin said, and he basically got it right, just has to do with the fact that there are limited resources. So not all organisms that are born will survive to reproduce, and that there are certain traits, such as having white fur in the winter, that make some organisms, some offspring, more likely to survive than others. And then that trait variation, such as coat color, is passed from one generation to the next. That is, it's heritable from parents to offspring.
How does that differ from genetic drift? Genetic drift is random selection within the population in order to determine which traits get passed on to the next generation. For example, if we have a bag of Skittles with red and yellow populations, randomly selecting 5 Skittles from the population that will make it to the next generation may leave us with either all reds, all yellows, or any sort of combination. It's completely random. You would think that a lot of genetic change is necessary to see variation in organisms and differences in physical traits, but that's not true. Let's say that one book holds all the genetic data needed for one organism. A single word change would be sufficient for us to see an overall change in a physical trait. What do these small changes in DNA, but large changes in physical traits of the organisms mean? This results in different physical and biological traits, which creates a lot of variation, and this variation can be the difference between life and death. This means that all of the organisms we see today are the fittest out of all the variations that were present. This concept, where only the fittest will survive, is known as survival of the fittest, and it is still an ongoing process today. By survival of the fittest, we don't mean but a competition for survival, the ability to reproduce. Those that are not fit cannot compete with others, and this is how all species go extinct. Extinction is a natural process of life, as only the fittest will survive. This doesn't mean that you'll see it in your everyday life, though. Evolution, driven by natural selection, is a long, slow process. It can take millions of years. So, if you think the transition between a floppy disk to a micro SD card took a long time, think again.